The UFC is back in the Apex this weekend for whatever the opposite of peak is. This card is a rough one, to say the least. But regardless, I'm going to break every single fight down, give you guys the notes and style of each fighter, as well as my best bets and prediction for each fight. Let's go. All right, guys, bear with me a little bit. I'm a tad under the weather, but the first fight, Kai Kamaka versus Dakota Hope. I mean, what a way to open up the Apex card, guys. Kai Kamaka, he signed to the UFC in 2020. He goes 1-2, 1-2-1, then gets cut. Bounced around some promotions. Now he's back with the UFC. Trains out of Extreme Couture. His style, he's a very average volume striker that does a good job of staying active over 15 minutes. He's just not very dangerous despite his most recent knockout win. He just doesn't really have the power or accuracy to be extremely or this knockout artist really. His opponent Dakota Hope, he was 11-1 on the regional scene, bounced around promotions, and then was actually scheduled to fight in another promotion in May, I believe, and then took this fight on short notice. He's the teammate of Joshua Van at 4 Ounce Fight Club as well down in Texas. His style, he's actually pretty decently well rounded. He's well built, strong guy. He likes to hold you up against the cage, get damage off, has what appears to be a decent grappling base. On the feet, though, I think he can be a little bit reckless and vulnerable. My prediction for the fight, I think Dakota Hope is going to win by unanimous decision, but at the same time, I don't know. And also, who cares? This is, I mean, if you really care about this fight, I mean, good for you, but I have no idea. I think my reasoning is I think Dakota Hope is a better prospect. And while I could see Kai Kamaka just kind of piecing him up over 15 minutes and getting a sort of craftier win, I think there's a reason why the UFC wanted Dakota Hope to debut on this short notice and why they decided to make this fight. I think they did it for a reason, and I think it's because they actually think Dakota Hope can win. So I think for him to win, he is the underdog. But outside of that, I'm steering clear of this one, betting wise. The next fight, Dione Barbosa versus Melissa Gatto. Dione Barbosa, she went 5-2 on the regional scene, gets a round one submission on the Dana White Contender Series, goes 2-2 in the UFC so far. Her most recent loss was a really close decision to Karine Silva, somebody that she actually beat on the regional scene in Brazil. She only has 12 pro fights so far in her career. But her style, she's an impressive BJJ artist. She's got really good submission ability. She can struggle defensively at times, on the feet. She has some slick boxing, just doesn't really throw a whole lot. Her output's relatively low, but she really just looks to take the fight to the mat and go to work there. Her opponent, Melissa Gatto, she went 6-0-2 on the regional scene, debuts in the UFC, gets two straight finishes, but then goes 1-2 in her next three. She also hasn't fought in over 21 months. Her style, she's a tight striker. She's got decent power and speed, but she can control from the top position if she looks to grapple, but just overall, her game is not very high level. My prediction for the fight, I think Barbosa gets it done by round two submission. I think she just out grapples Gato. And to be specific, to get ultra specific and really call my shot, I actually think Deonna Barbosa is going to guillotine her because I think she's got a nasty guillotine. And that's something that Gato's kind of left open in the past. So I think Barbosa gets it done. I think if you want to bet decision wise, I think submission, decision, double chance is probably your best bet there. But I don't really like anything time wise in this fight. And I'll probably say this a couple times throughout the card, but this is one where it's like you want to be pretty selective with what you're doing here. And I think really the only good bet here is Barbosa money line. All right, next up we have Azamat Bekaev versus Tresean Gore. Azamat Bekaev went 18-3 on the regional scene, became a champ in LFA, goes 2-1 in the UFC, has two round one knockouts, and then most recently lost to Yusri Belgarui, the really entertaining prospect that we just saw most recently on the Seattle card. Now he trains out of American Top Team. His style, he's an extremely well-rounded extremely well-rounded fighter with great power in his hands. He can be a bit plotty, headhunt at times. I'd like to see him be a more complete striker, go to the body a little bit more. Seems to have a fairly weak gas tank, but the power is really impressive with him. His opponent, Tresean Gore, he was 3-0 on the regional scene, goes on the Ultimate Fighter, loses. Now he's in the UFC, and since then he's been 2-4, losing to some really bad names, to say the least. His style, he's a very low level fighter. He'll have some moments, but just really lacks the skill to get to win these fights. His best weapon, or really only weapon, is his guillotine that he's used to obtain both of his wins in the UFC so far. My prediction for the fight, I think Bekaev knocks him out in the first round. Yeah, Tresean Gore's a tough guy, and that's kind of about it. I think Bekaev money line. He's one of the bigger favorites on the card. The fight to end in a knockout, I think, is a great bet, and the fight to not start in round three. Because, like I said, Tresean Gore is tough, but it's a really bad matchup for him. I think he likely gets cut after this one too, but yeah, hopefully Bekaev is able to make some noise and really wake up the card here. Alice Pereira versus Haley Cohen. Alice Pereira, no relation to Alex Pereira. She went 6-0 on the regional scene. She had 5 finishes, debuts at 19 years old at UFC Noche, and loses a split decision, which I think she clearly lost. Her style, she's a lengthy boxer, likes to move around and pick her shots, but almost a little bit too much. There are times when she dances around the octagon, and it's like, okay, it's time to engage now, but she doesn't. She continues to move. She's got good takedown defense and accuracy, clearly still growing and developing as a fighter, as most 19-year-olds who are fighting are. But her opponent, Haley Cohen, she went 6-2 on the regional scene, fights in LFA, gets a split decision win on the Contender Series, joins the UFC, and she's 0-2 since, with her most recent fight being her getting finished at UFC 314. Her style, she's a tough scrapper on the feet. She has above average offensive wrestling. She's not overly skilled in any aspect of her game. There's plenty of gaps, but she's not as terrible, I think, as maybe it's led on to believe. My prediction for the fight, I think Haley Cohen gets it done by unanimous decision. It's an underdog pick, so I think there's value there. Yeah, I think she lands takedowns. Sorry, I'm dying, you guys. I think she lands takedowns and is able to just do more to win the fight. Applies pressure, which is something that I think Pereira struggled with. But yeah, please leave this one alone. If you want to bet on Cohen as a crafty underdog, go ahead. But other than that, yeah, just leave this alone. I don't really see what the point is. Hopefully, Pereira improves. I think her being good would be better for the sport because she is a fun and entertaining prospect. But I just didn't see it in her most recent fight. So that's why I'm picking Haley Cohen. All right, next up, we really keep the momentum rolling with these Apex fights. Lando Venata versus Darius Flowers. Lando Venata, he got signed in the UFC in 2016 after a pretty good regional scene run. Goes 4-7-2 in the UFC. Moving weight classes, just never really finding his stride in the promotion. He hasn't fought since April of 2023. He's a very awkward striker. He's got good heart, has some durability, but seems to have most success when he's blitzing and moving forward. His opponent, Darius Flowers, he goes 11-5-1 on the regional scene. Gets kind of a fluky slam KO win on the Dana White Contender Series. Since joining the UFC, he's 0-3, getting finished twice. His style, he's a high output boxer. He's actually got pretty good hand speed, but he just never seems to do any damaging shots, despite how some of them may look. And he's got a very low fight IQ, really bad grappling skill as well. My prediction for the fight, I think Lando Venata will get it done by unanimous decision. Lando Venata over on takedowns makes sense. I think that's where he will look to take the fight is to the ground because of Darius Flowers' gap. And yeah, I mean, I think at minus 225, he's going to get it done as the favorite. Not super crazy about betting on this fight overall, just because there's a lot of unknowns here. But yeah, I think Lando Venata, more experience. He's just overall better fighter, and Darius Flowers probably gets cut. Wouldn't really care if both of them got cut after the fight, especially if it's a boring one. But I am anticipating that's how it plays out. But yeah, Lando Venata gets it done as the favorite here. All right, next up we got Alessandro Costa versus Stuart Nickel. Alessandro Costa, he went 11-2 on the regional scene, became a champ over in Lux, goes on the Contender Series and wins, but does not get awarded a contract. And then a year later, after a couple more wins on the regional scene, he gets his UFC debut. He's 2-3 in the UFC so far. His style, he's an undersized, explosive guy, has an actually pretty well-rounded skill set. He is teammates with Diego Lopez, and I think he kind of fights like a devolved flyweight version of him. Not very technical on the feet, but wants to exchange in the pocket and get off the more damaging shots. His opponent, Stuart Nickel, went 8-0 on the regional scene with 7 finishes, skips the Contender Series, debuts in 2024 at UFC 305, gets finished. His most recent fight, he also lost, making him 0-2 in the UFC. His style, he used to be this super dangerous guy with tons of finishing ability, but ever since joining the UFC, he's just been really timid. He has a bad gas tank. He relentlessly tries to take the fight to the mat, despite it never working out so far for him in the UFC. My prediction for the fight, I think Alessandro Costa will knock him out in round 3. Costa at minus 410, the money line, I think that's pretty obvious. The fight not to go this is at minus 170. I just think the bad gas tank of Stuart Nickel mixed with the pressure and danger sort of Costa will just end up in him kind of dragging this out where Nickel doesn't want it to go, wearing him down, and then finally finishing him either in late round 2 or round 3. So I think Costa gets it done as the favorite. And yeah, Stuart Nickel is probably another guy that if he loses should probably be cut. Next up, we got Guilherme Pat versus Thomas Peterson. Guilherme Pat, he went 5-0 on the regional scene. He was supposed to be on the Dana White Contender Series, but the bout got canceled. made his UFC debut on the last fight night of 2025 and won via decision. His style, he's a rangy striker with above average takedown defense, wants to strike from distance. The jab is by far his best weapon, but in his most recent fight, I just get that he has a low sense of urgency, bad footwork, just kind of sleptwalked through his most recent win. But his opponent, Thomas Peterson, he went 9-1 on the regional scene, gets a round 2 submission on the Dana White Contender Series, and is 2-3 in the UFC so far, being literally win loss, or I guess I should say loss win, because he's gone loss win, loss win, loss. You guys do the math. His style, he's a persistent grappler with very low level striking. He's kind of like fat, white Jailton Almeida in a way. Just, I guess, not even really as skilled. But my prediction for the fight, I think Thomas Peterson is going to win by unanimous decision. It's a toss up on the odds wise. It's pretty 50-50. Thomas Peterson's only minus 120. And I actually think he should be a larger favorite. I'm not saying like he's like some lock or I'm super confident, but I do think he should be a larger favorite. Fight to go the distance at plus 110, I think, is also a pretty decent value for a single bet. But yeah, I just think Gary Pat's decent. He's just nothing special in my opinion. Neither is Thomas Peterson, but I think the skill set that Thomas Peterson has, yeah, I think he's just going to wrestle fuck him for 3 rounds, unfortunately. Next up, we got Robert Ruchala versus Jose Delano. Jose Delano trains out of Brazilian top team. He went 15-3 on the regional scene, gets a win on the Dana White Contender Series, and now he's making his UFC debut. His style, he's a quick, calculated Muay Thai striker. Showed great volume and pace in his Contender Series fight. He landed over 140 significant strikes in a really fun scrap. His opponent, Robert Ruchala, he went 11-1 on the regional scene, became a champ in KSW, debuts at the UFC Paris card and gets beat by William Gomez. His style, he's a scrappy kickboxer. He's good length, but really lacks speed. Telegraphs a lot of his stuff as well. He'll implement level changes well and throw a lot of spinning attacks, but at sometimes it's almost like too much, like he's trying to do too much. But my prediction for the fight, I actually think Delano will win by unanimous decision, and this is actually a really fun fight between two pretty talented strikers. Delano moneyline at minus 325, Delano over on significant strikes, and the fight to go the distance. I just think Delano's more talented, and while Robert Ruchala has a big reach advantage, which I think is worth mentioning, Delano has a really big speed and accuracy advantage, which I think will just serve him better throughout the course of 15 minutes. I think he just outstrikes him to a decision. Neither of these guys are really big finishers, especially on the regional scene, so that's why I think the fight's going to go the distance. But yeah, I got Jose Delano getting it done in this one. Tommy Tough Knuckles is back, taking on Manolo Zucchini out of Italy. Tommy McMillan, the notes on him, he trains with Sean O'Malley. He's his teammate at Red Hawk. He went 8-0 on the regional scene, had a 100% finishing rate there. Goes on the Contender Series, has a really fun scrap. Now he's making his UFC debut. His style, he's just very good. He's a very good fighter, has a very complete skill set. He has good power and volume in the stand-up, but also has a really nasty submission game. I think that's where the majority of his finishes have come from throughout his career. He's also just got some aura to him. I think the UFC knows what they're doing with this guy, giving him a can, trying to build up his name, teammate of Sean O'Malley. Like, I think they know what they're doing. But his opponent, Manolo Zucchini, went 10-4 in the regional scene before getting knocked down in round 1 by Morgan Charrier. I'm pretty sure he was a short notice replacement. Not really sure what he's still doing in the UFC. He seems to just kind of be like a sacrificial lamb at this point, feeding him to Tommy McMillan. But his style, he's a low output striker, wants to pressure forward and like just uncork these bombs that he hopes lands, except they're all super telegraphed, so it's not very effective. Decent athlete, I think, and he has some length to him as well, but he's just not UFC level. My prediction for the fight, I think Tommy McMillan will win by round 1 submission. Probably a stun and sub. But yeah, McMillan, KO sub at minus 450 is way more worth paying out than minus 1300 money line. The fight to go under 1.5 rounds at minus 150 makes a lot of sense as well. And then, guys, the Italian blood in me, I can't not bet on Zucchini at plus 800. Why not? He's a huge underdog. I think he's going to get his shit kicked in, but, at plus 800, I guess at some point you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, Tommy McMillan gets a win. And yeah, like I said, the UFC kind of knows what they're doing with this one. This seems like a fight that is clearly made to build up his name, and I think that's what he'll do in this one. Real ones have been waiting for this. Ethan Ewing versus Rafael Estevam. Ethan Ewing, who's 8-2 on the regional scene, loses his first 2 professional fights, then goes 8-0. became a champion in A1 combat. And then 6 days after his A1 combat championship, the UFC called him up. He steps in on 3 days' notice to fight Malcolm Wellmaker, upsets him as the biggest underdog on the card, has a great performance in his debut. His style, he's just a really slick striker, good power and very good movement skills. I think that's probably his greatest strength is his movement. He was a D2 wrestler and a BJJ brown belt, had some moments wrestling against I can't Malcolm Wellmaker, but outside of that, I don't really know about his overall grappling skill. He might just be the bantamweight. This isn't even a style. This is just a joke. He might just be the bantamweight love child of Marvin Vettori and Conor McGregor. Look at his head. His head, his like it's built. I think it's like the Marvin Vettori head build. That's just built to absorb contact. I mean, he ate some nasty shots from Malcolm Wellmaker that we all know put people to sleep, and he just took him and kept going. And the Conor McGregor with the hair and like his very open kind of fluid karate stance and the way he moves. But anyways, his opponent Rafael Estevam, he went 10-0 in the regional scene, got a finish on the Contender Series. He's 3-0 to start a UFC career with a win over Charles Johnson in there as well. Kept missing weight, was kind of a weight bully, so he moved up to bantamweight. His style, he's a control grappler that lives in top position, very boring style. He has decent striking too, but looks to land a double leg and just control you from that. Once he achieves top position, his sole idea and goal is to control you for the remainder of the round. My prediction, I do think Ethan Ewing is going to win by round 2 TKO. I don't know if it's just because I don't know if Rafael Estevam's style is going to translate up a weight class. I think a lot of his game plan or what made him so good at flyweight is that he was so big and would kind of bully these flyweights. And I don't think he's going to be able to do that against Ethan Ewing. Now, I could be completely wrong. Maybe Ethan Ewing goes out there and just gets wrestle fucked over 3 rounds and it's like, oh well, I guess we had a fun run, Ethan Ewing. But I don't think that's the case. I think Ethan Ewing, he's a favorite for a reason. He's going to move around well. He's going to piece him up and land a big shot because he landed some really big shots against Malcolm Wellmaker that I don't know if Estevam is going to be able to absorb, like I said, up a weight class. I think that's a big story in this one that I don't think a lot of people are really taking into consideration. So I think Ethan Ewing wins. Estevam under on significant strike makes a lot of sense because I don't think he's going to strike with him. So yeah, Ethan Ewing gets it done and continues this really fun run that he's on. The feature bout on the card, Abdul Rahman Yakyaev versus Brennison Ribeiro. Abdul Rahman Yakyaev, he went 8-0 on the regional scene, won on the Contender Series via a 30-second submission. 6 of his 8 wins come by round 1 stoppage. His style, he's just pure violence and skill, but there's not a lot to evaluate. Both of his fights, his sole fight in the UFC and his Contender Series bout were both sub 30-second wins. He has good kickboxing, clearly has strong stand-up, but like I said, there's just not a lot to evaluate because he gets things done so fast. So just very violent and dangerous. But his opponent, Brennison Ribeiro, went 13-5 on the regional scene, gets a win on the Contender Series via round 1 knockout, and now he's 2-4 since joining the UFC, getting finished in round 1 3 times. But his style, he has some BJJ submission ability, decent defensive grappling, can sprawl every now and then, but he's just a very chinny, below average striker. Has some decent length, but like I said, finished in round 1 3 times. Chin isn't that great. My prediction for the fight, I think Yakyaev will win by round 1 TKO. Seems like a layup for him. The fight to go under 1.5 rounds at -500. Sub KO win for Yakyaev at -850 is almost not even worth paying out, but I just don't see the fight going any other way. It could be a stunning sub. That's why I'm hesitant to say Yakyaev KO because he's so good at noticing his opponents are hurt, taking their back and submitting them. So I think sub KO at -850 makes a lot of sense. And then Ribeiro under significant strikes because I don't think he's going to land one. But yeah, like I said, a layup for Yakyaev, and I think he'll get it done early. The co-main event, Verna Jandiroba versus Tabitha Ricci. Verna Jandiroba, she was undefeated on the regional scene in Brazil, signed to the UFC in 2019, loses her debut, but she went 8-3 since. She pieced together a really nice and impressive win streak, but then she fought for the vacant title against Mackenzie Dern and ended up losing that fight. Her style, she's a very strong and crafty BJJ grappler. Probably one of the best in women's MMA. Fairly weak overall striker. She lacks technicality and accuracy in her stand-up game. Her opponent, Tabitha Ricci, she only had 3 true MMA fights in LFA before getting signed to the UFC. In 2021, she also loses her debut. Since then, she's gone 7-2 and won 3 of her last 4. Her style, she also is a really strong BJJ grappler with fairly weak stand-up. She wants to use dirty boxing and pace to kind of mud up the fight, implement takedowns and things like that. My prediction for the fight, I do think Jandiroba will get it done by unanimous decision. I think Tabitha Ricci is just kind of like a devolved version of Verna Jandiroba. I keep saying that this video, I don't know why, but yeah, I mean they have very similar skill sets, but I think Jandiroba is just better everywhere the fight goes. Maybe Tabitha Ricci can, like I said, implement that dirty boxing and maybe make things interesting, but I don't think so. I think people kind of underestimate Jandiroba's grappling ability because of the most recent fight with Mackenzie Dern, but I still think she's a great fighter. Tabitha Ricci just isn't quite on her level. Betting wise, I like the fight to go the distance at minus 340 and Jandiroba money line at minus 125. And for the enjoyment of watching this fight, take the under because I think this might be a bit of a boring one. The main event, yes, the main event. Money Moicano versus Chris Duncan. Money Moicano, he trains at ATT. This dude has probably the funniest career trajectory of all time. He starts off his UFC career at featherweight, struggles there, moves up to lightweight, puts together a pretty impressive streak, beats Benoit Saint Denis, then hilariously enough fights for the title against Islam Makhachev on short notice, gets submitted in round 1, then turns around and fights Beneil Dariush and loses to Beneil Dariush. However, he is still one of the funniest guys in the entire sport. His personality is so big. He's really entertaining. His style, he's a brawler, pretty average stand up, but has decent power and pace, or with little power but decent pace. He has a good BJJ skill set, but will struggle against control wrestling, I think, the most. And because he's a former featherweight, he has a slimmer frame, and I think bigger guys for the division tend to give him more problems. But his opponent, Chris Duncan, he also trains out of American Top Team. He loses on the Contender Series, then goes back, I think, 2 years later and gets a win. 6-1 in the UFC so far. Looks really improved, especially in his most recent fights. Pieced together a 4-fight win streak with his most recent win coming against Terrence McKinney. His style, really durable guy, strong control grappling and submission ability. On the feet, he's really scrappy, has decent. I think he does have good power. He doesn't spend a lot of time on his feet. He typically aims to take his opponent down and work there. But on the feet, what he has showcased so far, I think he does have pretty decent power. He just lacks defensive ability, not very defensively sound. My prediction for this fight, I think Chris Duncan will get it done by round 2 TKO. I'm not overly confident in this one. I do love Moicano. Like I said, he's one of the best personalities in the sport. I'm just not very confident in his ability to get it done. I think it goes similarly to the Beneil Dariush fight, except I think Chris Duncan is able to find a knockout in there somewhere. Moicano, Chris Duncan, these are 2 really fun scrappers. It'll be a fun fight regardless, I think. I'm just not very convinced on how this fight will play out from a game plan standpoint. I don't know if either of these guys are going to be super urgent to implement grappling. Because, like I said, Moicano does have a strong BJJ game, but Chris Duncan is also a really strong control grappler himself as well, who also has plenty of submission wins. So I think they actually end up duking it out on the feet, and I think Chris Duncan is able to get it done. To recap everything, like I've said throughout the breakdown, there's not a ton of value throughout this card, not a ton of stuff that I feel great about, but parlay-wise, I think McMillan to finish the fight at minus 450 is good value. Jandiroba at minus 125, I think, is some of the best value on the entire card. Barbosa money line at minus 130. Bekaev under 3 rounds, so the fight did not start in round 3 at minus 110 is good value. Chris Duncan, I am fairly confident, like I said, in his ability to win the method and decision. I'm not really overly confident on, but his money line at minus 175 makes a lot of sense. And the Costa money line at minus 410, I think, is also pretty decent value. High value wise, Zucchini is probably the highest value bet, or is definitely the highest value bet at plus 800. You can maybe just skip out on that one. I just got to put it on there because it's worth putting on there. Plus 800, like I said, I think it's going to get a shit kicked in, but good value regardless. Peterson Pat fight to go the distance at plus 110. I think that makes a lot of sense. Hope money line and Cowan money line, they're both underdogs. So at plus 125 and plus 110, I think both of those are pretty decent value. And then Ewing to win by KO is plus 325, something that I actually did not include on the slide itself, but something that I'm including right here on the recap. So Ewing KO at plus 325, I think is something that's likely or a possible outcome with a decent probability of happening. So at plus 325, I think it's pretty good value. But yeah, I'll be watching the card. Not overly thrilled about the fights on it. I mean, I'm sure some people are happy, but yeah, I would have rather just kind of like skipped over a week and just gone to UFC 327. However, next week we will be locked and loaded because it's going to be a really banger card. There's tons of fun fights. Yuri Prohashka is fighting Carlos Olberg. And then really the fight that I'm most excited for is the flyweight championship because I'm a huge Joshua Van fan and I'm an even bigger Tatsuro Taira fan, which is so unfortunate because I've been on Tatsuro Taira for a really long time. He's been by far my favorite contender. And even when he was even just a prospect, he was still one of my favorites. So that's going to be a super fun fight. I don't want either of those guys to lose, unfortunately, but one of them is going to have to. So that'll be a really fun card. I'm also working on a couple other videos. I think I'm going to finally integrate some football into this channel. And yeah, we'll see. I think it'll be a fun, creative video. But yeah, if you guys have like any ideas or suggestions, anything like that, text me or put it in the comments if you don't know me miraculously and you're just watching this video. But yeah, still having fun doing this. I still, um, want to make videos. I think they're fun. This is fun for me. So hopefully you guys enjoy watching these. And yeah, let me know what you guys have. Let me know what you guys place and tell me how you do. See ya.